Hi, I'm Casey Green with the Campus Computing Project. We're here in Las Vegas at TransformingEDU 2014, scheduled in conjunction with the 2014 Consumer Electronics Show. And I'm speaking today with Miguel Encarnacao. Did I get pretty well? Close enough, thank you. Who is Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer at American College Testing, known to many by its initials of ACT. Welcome, thanks you for joining us today. There were no legacy systems and no legacy users. We take a deep breath, a pregnant pause, we think about how that applies to education, and that sort of sets all kinds of things in play. What is that, in the terms of ACT's role in the education community, you kind of bridge between K-12, higher ed, other kinds of services as well. What does innovation mean for ACT in terms of the kinds of resources and services, and if you will, as a catalyst for innovation for your education clients and for the larger community?
Correct. So it really means for us a cultural shift. In the past, we were an integral element of the ecosystem called education. And we could fulfill actually a great role in allowing innovation to happen within that system because we're all about evidence, what works, what doesn't work. Right?
Massive amounts of evidence.
Massive amounts of evidence.
ACT.
But like many systems, education is one, healthcare is another one.
Yes.
In the past, the legacy system was sitting on a lot of data for transaction purposes and not really making use of that. So we build a completely new framework around innovation at ACT that starts with discovery, so that's the data, the insights, and then goes through creative problem solving and invention or building things, all the way then what we call delight. So the consumer is at the center of our innovation. We try to employ participatory design, involve the end customer as early in the process as possible, and collaborate with anybody out there who is aligned around mission and wants to improve the system as we know it. And we think we can play a significant role in that.
And in the context of when you talk about customer, you're not talking about the students who actually take ACT tests. You're talking about institutions and institutional leaders, I'm assuming.
I actually talk about the student. So our traditional customers are institutions and are districts, states, etc. But really, the fundamental consumer is the student, is their parent that need data in order to make better decisions around where to improve, which college to pick, which job to pursue, all those things. So these are really, if you want, the beneficiaries if we do something right.
That's a fundamental change for the folks as testing agencies who many viewed as being gatekeepers. I get my number and it sits on my forehead for the rest of my life.
Correct.
So how does that play out?
It's very well received, and we're building actually platforms that allow us to pursue this type of open innovation with our large, diverse stakeholder audiences. And we created a complete user experience initiative throughout the company where we put the customer and the individual consumer at, and that is a significant shift, but it shows already some benefits.
You mentioned healthcare. I have a sustained relationship with my healthcare provider. 17-year-old high school students typically in the past, didn't have a sustained relationship with an organization or an agency like ACT. It was I'm in, I'm out, I'm done, and then whatever happens. How do you build that? Does that also mean you're trying to build sustained relationships with students?
Absolutely. We're trying to create a lifelong relationship with students and their influences, so the parents, the counselors, etc. I think we have succeeded when we can adopt something like the quantified self that comes out of healthcare, where people love to measure themselves for their own benefit, compare their own data with other people's data in order to better understand what works for them and what doesn't. If we can apply that to education and change the perception around assessment as this gatekeeping function that prevents you from doing certain things or prohibits you from doing certain things, to assessment as something you want to do in order to better understand your options.
That's a fundamental change. I mean, in healthcare, my physician, my provider can tell me that normative data that you're talking about, this is how I can do better. That's not typically the way data has been presented to students or even organizations, institutions, as end users and consumers.
Correct. It's a fundamental shift. It's also a shift from summative assessment and, of course, to formative throughout, if you want, the classroom activities. and showing really the progression over time. So it's not anymore you have not reached the benchmark, but this is your trajectory. Here you're getting better. Here are some gaps. How can you remediate around that? What can you do about it? Here are other people like you that you might want to join up with. So making much more use of the data.
In the context of the institutional clients, whether they're school districts or colleges and universities, again, culture plays very heavily as a catalyst as an agent against change, doing things differently. Data can be a catalyst along the lines that you're describing in terms of not as a weapon but as a resource, not what are you doing wrong but what are you doing better. What are the three levers in that process? Not just only the presentation of data, but the way that ACT as a catalyst for innovation can come to a school district or a college or university and say, here's the path, here's how we connect the dots, here's how we take the data to provide information to provide insight, to get you from point A to point wherever.
Correct. So first of all, I mean, every single person in the school system is there because they really want to do something good, right? They want to improve education, they want to help children succeed and all those types of things. It's the system to a degree and the infrastructer that's in the way. So one of the biggest lever is really to start with the value proposition for the customers and therefore understanding, even the institutional customers, what are their daily challenges and how can we, with the right data, help them with their daily challenges. And the other one you addressed already is a big challenge is we have a lot of data and traditionally we threw it over the fence and let people do whatever they wanted or could do with it.
Or nothing with it.
Or nothing.
Too often nothing.
Too often nothing. And that is the fundamental challenge here is data illiteracy throughout the system. All the customers we give data to, how many of them really have been educated in analyzing, mining data, communicating effectively with data to their audiences, right? And so we are trying to actually also, on the data communication side, create then services and offerings where normal people that are not data scientists can actually derive value from the data presented.
But in the context of at least colleges and universities, and I presume to some degree school districts as well, you're pushing a very huge stone uphill. Like I can tell you on the basis of 3 national surveys I've done over the last 2 years, almost 1,000 presidents, 1,100 provosts, 550 surveys, 550 financial CFOs, and almost as many IT officers. Barely a third to a fourth say their institutions do a good job of using data for decision making. There is still a culture of opinion and epiphany, even if the data might be available.
But I think it's changing, and there are a couple of forerunners that do a fantastic job around this. Think about what's happening in Miami-Dade or so, right, where they really base all their decisions on data. So data becomes not an option, but it's kind of the lifeblood of all their decision making, right? And I think that trend will continue with better tools, with better offerings around data. And the other one is our shift to the individual. Once the system recognizes the benefit of the individual and their influences, understanding the data, they will expect also more from the system. And we hope that there will be some push that supports us also in this.
I began our conversation with a joke about God creating the world in 7 days, legacy systems, legacy users. Let me end with one for your comment as well. There's a joke about how many psychiatrists in California does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is none. The light bulb has to want to change. And that may also be a good characterization of higher education and education at large. So having said that, what are the 3 levers for change or things that can change, sort of leverage you can pull to work on that culture of change and innovation in education?
I mean, one is certainly data, because it's evidence, right? Here we are at CES, there are a lot of cool products. Often they miss that evidence. They have been tested with a very small group, or the kids love it, right? So it's not enough evidence. The second one, I would say, is really the consumer and the individuals that are growing up expecting other things than in the past. They expect to be surrounded by their own data, to have access to their own data. And I think the third lever is all those alternative also systems that are emerging that show good evidence around other things that work or work better. And the system starts kind of adopting it. You see that with MOOCs, universities are playing around what the role of MOOCs could be in their traditional teaching, flipped classroom, blended learning. All those things are being now absorbed by the system because it's massively failing, and the end customer is not willing anymore to pay a lot of money without the guarantee of a job at the end of higher education.
Great. Thanks very much for your time
You're
today.
very welcome.
Thank you.